Years old, there arose one morning an unresolvable crisis between my mother and me. I was in my bedroom playing with my toys when she entered and knelt beside me on the floor. "We will not be eating grapes or lettuce anymore," she said. I put my toys down and looked up into her face. It seemed odd and outlandish, this sudden rule, the kind of rule that comes from nowhere, out of nowhere, made solely at the whim of the adult world. "That's a dumb rule," I said. "It's not a dumb rule," my mother said, and she went on to patiently explain that the rule was not her own, but the rule of the Socialist Workers' Party, which was itself following the rule of Sayrafiezadeh and the United Farm Workers, who had called for a national boycott of table grapes and iceberg lettuce. All of this she explained in the simplest of terms that allowed me to understand and accept the edict. "You're such a good boy," my mother said, and she kissed me on the top of my head. As the days passed, however, and the boycott carried on, I found that my desire for grapes began to eclipse my compassion for the workers. Now it was my turn to interrupt my mother one morning. "I'm ready to eat grapes," I said. I said it as plainly as she had. She closed the book she was reading and looked down at me quizzically. "You can't eat grapes," she said. "You know that." And then she added, "And you can't eat iceberg lettuce either." "I don't want to eat iceberg lettuce," I responded brightly, thinking that she would see this as a welcome compromise. "Well," she said, "you can't eat that." She said with measure, adult with child, adult instructing child. I detected, though, somewhere beneath her rational exterior, an undercurrent of satisfaction. "I want to eat grapes," I said. "You can't eat grapes," she said. And then I screamed, "I want to eat grapes, I want to eat grapes." And I rolled on the floor, rolling on my back, "I want to eat grapes." "Well, you can't eat grapes," the light and airy voice said. "And you can't eat iceberg lettuce." From then on, the absence of grapes became a constant, unyielding presence in my life. It seemed I was never far from a political poster about not eating grapes, or a leaflet, or a t-shirt, or a conversation, or a forum. I descended into a state of perpetual yearning that intertwined so tightly with my desire that it became impossible to distinguish one from the other, and that established a terrible equation for me. Desire equals yearning. All of this culminated in the button my mother made me pin to my jacket, which featured the logo of the United Farm Workers, a black eagle with widespread wings against a blood-red background, along with the unequivocal imperative, "Don't eat grapes." I interpreted this not so much as an entreaty to the outside world, as a scarlet letter to remind me of my own sinful desire, which ever quenched would be through the immiseration of others. "Is the boycott over yet?" I'd ask my mother. "Not yet," she'd say. "When will the boycott be over? When the capitalists give the workers their rights? When will that happen?" "I don't know." "When it happens, will we eat grapes?" "Yes." Weeks passed. "Is the boycott over?" "No." Months passed. "Is the boycott over?" "No." I had become that fox I had learned about in Aesop's fable, who jumped again and again without success at the bunch of grapes dangling on the branch above him. The story that the fox concocts in order to soothe himself and allay his disappointment is that the grapes themselves are sour and most likely not worth his effort. The condition I drew, however, was of a different nature. I began to see what my mother saw. The flaw was inside me. Desire under capitalism was a shameful, unwanted condition, and one should never attempt to satisfy that desire, but instead, through heightened consciousness of the world, transcend it, and by so doing, rid oneself of it forever. 3 blocks from our apartment in Brooklyn was the supermarket in which my mother and I would do the weekly shopping. This occasion presented a predicament for the two of us. Not only was I in proximity to great mountains of grapes, but I was also keenly aware that my neighbors, most of them poor, would effortlessly, without any apparent compunction, load up their shopping carts with the fruit. "Look, Ma," I'd say, "it's okay for us to eat grapes." "No," she'd say, "it's not." And once we had finished our shopping, I would have to stand beside her in front of the supermarket while she unzipped her knapsack and handed out an endless supply of leaflets with the black eagle, the red background, and those three simple words. Then one day, after untold months of my ceaseless and unending demand, we were standing in the middle of the produce aisle when she said to me with obvious exasperation, "Eat one grape." I could not believe my good fortune. Immediately, I reached my hand up toward the piles towering above me, and I plucked without choosing. The grape was heavier than I remembered grapes to be. I popped it into my mouth and bit down. Fluid squirted into my cheeks. I chewed happily, violating the farm workers without remorse. Then three things occurred all at once. The first was that I realized how delicious the grape was, vindication of all the effort I had expended on obtaining it. The second was that I resolved that this would not be the last time I was ever permitted to eat a grape. And finally, and most essential, I understood that the simple act of eating instantly rewrote the formula between desire and yearning, creating a new equation: desire plus yearning equals theft. What was paramount for my mother, though, was that I had not breached the sanctity of the boycott. If anything, the supermarket took a loss on their investment, and therefore, in an indirect way, thievery actually strengthened the struggle of the farm workers. Desire plus yearning plus theft equals revolution. The next time we were in the grocery store, my mother, now unable to turn back from the course of her decision, again allowed me to have a grape. The next time I ate without permission. After that, I ate three, so on and so forth. It became so habitual that I would stand leisurely in front of the mounds of grapes as if there were a buffet and I was considering my options. I would pluck casually as my mother shopped elsewhere in the store, my button informing the world to do the opposite of what I was doing. One afternoon, in the middle of my revelry, with my mouth full and my hand reaching, I had the uncomfortable sensation that I was being observed. Not too far away, an elderly woman was staring at me intently. I resented her interference in what I had come to think of as a private moment, and I stopped chewing. "Go ahead," she said sweetly. "Go ahead and eat another one." I wanted to follow her suggestion, but there was something in her voice that made me hesitate. Were her words really words of encouragement? I sensed that I was in danger of being entrapped in the indecipherable language of adult sarcasm. I peered at the woman, who in turn peered at me. She had snow white hair and leaned on a cane and did not appear to have an unkind face. Perhaps she supported the boycott and therefore saw me as an ally, championing the rights of migrant workers. It struck me suddenly how peculiar it was that an adult would actually endorse thievery. And I somehow saw that I was following a peculiar set of rules. They were, of course, the correct rules, but they had set me in opposition to the rest of the world, where my right was everyone else's wrong, and where my wrong was everyone else's right, and where I would be helpless in ever being able to distinguish for myself which one was which. Thank you.